As the Wilson family's second daughter, I had to live in Jessica's shadow growing up. Our parents said she was flawless in every aspect, and she was 5 years older. I was taught this lesson at a young age, and it was repeated every day in both significant and minor ways. I was thrilled to show my parents that I had gotten an A on my arithmetic test when I was 6 years old. They were admiring Jessica's new dancing move as they were in the kitchen. Mother remarked, "That's nice, honey," without even glancing at my paper. "But look at your sister's pirouette." I silently made my way to my room after standing there with my test till the paper became limp in my palms. The pattern remained constant. I got her hand-me-downs while Jessica got new things from the mall. They got her the newest iPhone when she requested a phone at the age of 12. I was told to be thankful when I received Jessica's old flip phone on my 12th birthday. Dad used to say, "Your sister is going places," if I ventured to voice my displeasure. She needs these things for her future. My future didn't seem to require much investment. The same material was used to make our paternal grandparents, who had a swimming pool and a well-kept lawn in a posh area of town. Grandma Margaret always greeted Jessica with big hugs and enthusiastic squeals when we came, while I received a distracted pat on the head. She would exclaim, "Oh, Sarah," as if she had just realized I was there. "You've grown." However, Christmas when I was 8 years old truly made the point. Jessica opened a brand new laptop that she needed for her coursework. I received several pencils and a bag of notebooks. "We're being practical," Grandpa Richard said, grinning patronizingly. "This is more your speed, isn't it?" However, my mother's parents' home served as my own haven. On the opposite side of town, Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George occupied a little ranch-style house. Something extraordinary occurred there. I was given the respect I deserved. When I spoke, they would genuinely pay attention. They put my artwork next to Jessica's on their refrigerator. When I visited, they prepared my favorite dishes because they remembered them. Jessica detested going there. She would gripe, "It's so boring. They don't even have a pool." And Grandma Eleanor never lets me choose what we watch on TV. She thus stopped coming, so I had them all to myself. I spent my afternoons with Eleanor and George's while our parents were busy escorting Jessica to her never-ending schedule of events. Ballet 1 month, horseback riding the next, and violin lessons she would stop after 3 weeks. They helped me with my homework, showed me how to bake cookies, and never once made comparisons between me and my sister. My parents made the ultimate decision on my value to the family when I was 10 years old. In what they referred to as a family meeting, the sentencing was set long before the trial even started, yet it seemed more like a trial. It was an October Sunday afternoon. The 6 of us sat down in our living room, Jessica and I sitting on chairs we had brought in from the dining room, both sets of grandparents on the matching sofas, and Mom and Dad standing by the fireplace. The air was thick with artificial significance. Dad started off by saying, "We need to discuss something serious," with his hands clenched behind his back like a CEO announcing layoffs. As you know, college education isn't getting any cheaper. I saw Jessica sit up straight in her chair and brush her flawless blonde hair. She was already rehearsing her future college student posture at the age of 15. I already knew where this was headed, so I sat still with my hands folded in my lap. Mom went on, looking at Jessica. "We've been saving since the girls were born. But with the current economy, well, we can only afford to send one of them to college." The subsequent delay was only for theatrical effect, similar to how TV shows create tension before revealing the clear winner, and it wasn't actually a pause at all. "Jessica will be starting college in 3 years," Dad declared. "She has demonstrated exceptional talent in a wide range of fields. We must encourage her to reach her full potential." He then turned to face me, his face displaying a mixture of contempt and phony pity. "Sarah, you're unique, my dear. You are more equipped for hands-on work. College isn't actually necessary for you." Dad's mother, Grandma Margaret, gave a hearty nod. The woman said, "Jessica is so gifted. She possessed natural elegance, according to her dancing instructor only last week. She must have the greatest education available." As I sat there, I felt less and less like Jessica, not gifted enough, not valuable enough to invest in. Now the well-known statement has just been formally sealed and stamped. But then something unexpected happened. Grandpa George stood up, his face red with anger. "This is absolutely unfair," he declared. "How dare you write off a 10-year-old child like this?" George, my father, started, but Grandma Eleanor cut him off. "If you won't support both your daughters equally," she said, her voice sharp as ice, "then we'll pay for Sarah's college ourselves." I watched as my maternal grandparents stood up together, a united front. "Sarah will have her chance at college," Grandma Eleanor announced. "We'll make sure of that." Then they walked out, leaving a stunned silence behind. Later that night, I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard my parents talking in their bedroom. The heating vent carried their words clearly up to the hallway. "Mother's being ridiculous," Mom was saying. "Sarah's not college material. She can barely keep up in regular classes. They should give us that money for Jessica's education instead. It would be wasted on Sarah. She's just not bright enough." "I don't know why they're pushing this," Dad agreed. I stood there in the dark hallway, their words washing over me like a familiar bit of rain. But somehow, it didn't hurt as much as it should have. Maybe because I'd heard it all before, or maybe because I could still hear Grandma Eleanor's fierce promise echoing in my head. The years passed, and Jessica went off to an expensive private college while I finished high school. My parents never missed a chance to brag about their perfect daughter, constantly updating everyone about Jessica's amazing college experience, her excellent grades, and her bright future ahead. I focused on my own studies, spending most of my time at Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George's house. Their quiet support meant more than all my parents' loud praise of Jessica ever could. Then came the day that shattered my parents' perfect vision of their golden child. I was in my senior year when Jessica came home from college, fresh from graduation. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when she burst through the front door, mascara running down her face. "Mom, Dad," she sobbed. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom dropped her coffee mug, dark liquid spreading across the kitchen floor. "Who's the father?" Dad finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jessica's next words sent Mom collapsing into a chair. "I don't know for sure." I watched my parents' faces as their perfect world crumbled, but it took them less than 5 minutes to reconstruct it. "Oh, sweetie," Mom rushed to hug Jessica. "It's not your fault. These things happen." "We'll help you raise the baby," Dad added quickly. "You can stay here with us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious?" I said from my spot at the table. "She parties her way through college, gets pregnant, doesn't even know who the father is, and you're still making excuses for her." "Sarah," Mom snapped. "No, listen," I continued, years of frustration finally boiling over. "This is what happens when you spoil someone their entire life, when you never make them face consequences." "How dare you?" Dad thundered. "Your sister is going through a difficult time, and you're being cruel." Jessica burst into fresh tears, and Mom wrapped her arms around her protectively. "Get out," she screamed at me. "You heartless little." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran upstairs, threw some clothes into a bag, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear them consoling Jessica, telling her everything would be okay, that none of this was her fault. Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George took me in without question. I finished my senior year living with them, focusing on my college applications. My parents didn't call, didn't check on me, didn't even show up at my graduation. But I had my real family there, my grandparents, beaming with pride. As I accepted my diploma that fall, I left for college in another city, my tuition paid by my grandparents, just as they'd promised years ago. I heard through the grapevine that Jessica had given birth to a daughter and was living with our parents. They were probably still making excuses for her, still treating her like their perfect child who could do no wrong. Life had a funny way of working out. While Jessica's brilliant future had crumbled, I was thriving. After graduating college with honors, I landed a job at a top consulting firm in the city. Within 6 years, I had worked my way up to senior consultant, earned respect from my colleagues, and even managed to buy my own apartment. My routine was comfortable. Challenging work during the week, weekend brunches with friends, and regular video calls with Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George. They were proud of everything I'd accomplished, and that was all the family validation I needed. Then, on a regular Tuesday morning, my phone rang. I almost dropped my coffee when I saw Mom flash across the screen, a number I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Sarah, her voice sounded older, tired. We need your help. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my office, still trying to process what she'd told me. Jessica had run away again, this time with some guy she'd met at a bar. She'd left behind her 9-year-old daughter, the niece I'd never met. Please come home, Mom had pleaded. We need to discuss this in person. That's how I found myself driving back to my childhood home that evening. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling around the windows. Mom and Dad had aged more than I expected. Dad's hair completely gray now, Mom's face lined with worry. They led me to the living room, the same room where they'd once declared I wasn't worth sending to college. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica's been unstable, Dad began, staring at his hands. She never kept a job for more than a few months. Different men, different apartments. She always ended up back here. Mom wiped her eyes. We tried to help, paid her debts, watched Lucy while she worked, or said she was working. But last week she met this man, said he was taking her to California to become an actress. She laughed bitterly. She packed a bag and left, didn't even say goodbye to Lucy. We're drowning in debt, Dad admitted, his voice cracking. Credit cards, personal loans, all to keep Jessica afloat. And now I waited for the rest, watching them squirm uncomfortably on the couch that had faded from cream to dingy beige. We want you to take Lucy, Mom finally said. Adopt her, actually. You're stable, successful. You could give her a good life. We're too old for this. We can't start over with a child. I sat there, stunned. These people, who had written me off as worthless, who hadn't even come to my graduation, were now asking me to take responsibility for a child I'd never met. A child they'd helped raise for 9 years while enabling Jessica's chaos. After my parents went to bed that night, I sat in the kitchen with Lucy. She was nothing like I expected, nothing like Jessica. While my sister had been loud and demanding, Lucy was quiet and thoughtful, with serious brown eyes and a gentle smile. Do you like to read? I asked, noticing a worn copy of Harry Potter on the kitchen counter. I love it, she said softly, but Grandma says I read too much. She says I should do something useful instead. Over cups of hot chocolate, Lucy slowly opened up. She told me about her life with my parents, how Grandma sighed heavily whenever she had to make Lucy dinner, how Grandpa complained about the cost of her school supplies. They didn't hit her or starve her, but their resentment was palpable in every interaction. I spent the next week taking time off work, getting to know my niece. We went for ice cream, visited the local library, and talked about everything and nothing. Lucy was smart, kind, and remarkably resilient despite everything she'd been through. She showed me her Strata report cards that no one had ever celebrated, her artwork that never made it to the fridge. The decision to adopt her wasn't easy. I had a career, a life I'd built carefully from scratch. But watching Lucy try to make herself smaller, quieter, less troublesome, just as I had at her age, made the choice clear. The legal process was exhausting. For months, I gathered documentation, my financial records, character references, proof of stable employment. Jessica didn't contest the termination of her parental rights, didn't even show up for the hearing. Finally, after what felt like endless paperwork and interviews, I became Lucy's legal guardian. The day we packed up her room at my parents' house, they barely looked up from their TV show. "Don't forget to forward her school records," was all Mom said. Lucy flourished in our new life together. She decorated her room in our apartment with fairy lights and bookshelves, joined the school's debate team, made friends who came over for movie nights and study sessions. We developed our own little rituals: Sunday morning pancakes, evening walks in the park, marathon sessions of board games. Monthly visits to Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George became a highlight for both of us. They doted on Lucy the way loving grandparents should, proudly displaying her artwork and report cards, remembering her favorite foods, listening to her stories with genuine interest. 5 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Lucy turned 14, growing into a confident, compassionate teenager who consistently made the honor roll. My parents never called to check on her, never sent birthday cards, never asked how she was doing. But Lucy didn't seem to mind. She had found her real family. The phone call from my parents came on a Saturday morning. "We'd like you and Lucy to come visit," Mom said, her voice suspiciously cheerful. "We miss her." After 5 years of silence, their sudden interest set off alarm bells. But I decided to go. Lucy deserved to make her own choices about family relationships, and I didn't want to be the one standing in her way. The moment we walked through their front door, I understood why they'd called. Jessica was there, sitting on the couch like she'd never left. "Lucy," she cried, jumping up and rushing toward my niece. "Oh, baby, I've missed you so much." I watched Lucy's face carefully. She stood frozen, emotions flickering across her features: hope, fear, confusion, longing. Jessica wrapped her in a tearful embrace, while our parents looked on approvingly. "I've changed," Jessica announced, wiping her eyes. "I've realized what's important. I want my daughter back." The word "back" hit me like a slap, like Lucy was a borrowed sweater she'd finally decided to reclaim. "I'm living in Phoenix now," Jessica continued, "with Robert. He's got a great job, and we have a beautiful house. Lucy would love it there." "Do you have a job?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Jessica's smile faltered. "Well, not right now, but Robert makes enough for all of us." "And what happens if things don't work out with Robert?" I pressed. "What's your backup plan?" "Why are you being so negative?" Mom snapped. "Your sister is trying to do the right thing." "The right thing?" I laughed incredulously. The right thing would have been not abandoning her daughter for 5 years. The right thing would have been sending birthday cards, making phone calls, showing any interest at all in Lucy's life. "I made mistakes," Jessica wailed, "but she's my daughter." "Stop being selfish, Sarah," Dad cut in. "You've done your part, but Lucy needs her real mother now. You can have your own children if you want to play mommy so badly." I stared at them, stunned by their cruelty. These people who had failed not one but 2 daughters. They had enabled Jessica's irresponsibility for decades and had never once, in 5 years, asked how Lucy was doing in school or what her interests were. Now they thought they could just restart the cycle of dysfunction. "Lucy isn't a toy you can pass around," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "She's a person who needs stability and real love, not empty promises." Where were you when she had nightmares, when she was sick, when she won the school spelling bee? Where were any of you? "You have no right," Jessica screamed. "She's my child." "A child you abandoned," I shot back. "A child you left with people who resented her existence. A child who deserved better than all of you." Lucy, who had been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly grabbed my hand. "We're leaving," I announced, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "And don't you dare try to contact us." Jessica's call came exactly a week after our confrontation. When I saw her number, I almost didn't answer, but something told me to record the conversation, a habit I developed after years of dealing with difficult clients. "Hey, sis," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I've been thinking about our situation, and I think I have a solution that could work for everyone." "What situation?" "Lucy, of course. Look, I know you've gotten attached to her, and I know you make good money at your fancy job. So here's the deal. Give me $150,000, and I won't sue for custody." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "Excuse me." "It's really a win-win," Jessica continued casually, as if she weren't trying to sell her own child. "You get to keep Lucy, and I get enough money to start fresh. You can afford it with your salary." "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice shaking. "You're trying to sell your daughter to me?" "Don't be so dramatic. I'm just being practical. You want Lucy. I need money. Simple business transaction. She's your child, Jessica, not a used car." "Fine," she snapped, her sweet tone vanishing. "Have it your way. I'll sue for custody, and you'll never see her again." "How's that for practical?" She hung up and I sat there, clutching my phone, feeling sick to my stomach. The lawsuit came 3 days later. Jessica's new boyfriend had hired her a slick lawyer who specialized in family court. The initial filing painted Jessica as a reformed mother who had overcome hardship to create a stable home for her daughter, while portraying me as a manipulative aunt who had taken advantage of a temporary situation. In court, Jessica played her role perfectly. Tears streaming down her face, she told the judge about her journey of personal growth and how she'd found stability with her new partner. She claimed I had alienated Lucy from her, that I was using her daughter to prove I was better than my sister. On her behalf, our parents testified that they had only requested me to babysit Lucy for a short time while Jessica recovered. Dad even implied that I was trying to turn Lucy against her mother by influencing her emotionally. I was ready when I sat there and listened to their falsehoods while they spun their web of deceit. "Your Honor," my attorney said, "I'd like to submit an audio recording into evidence." As Jessica's words filled the courtroom, her face became pale. "I won't file a custody lawsuit if you give me $150,000. I need money. You want Lucy." Straightforward commercial deal. The ensuing hush was deafening. Jessica's attorney stumbled and attempted to protest, but the harm was already done. For the first time, our parents remained still in their chairs, making no excuses to accommodate their ideal daughter. Then Lucy got to her feet. She appeared older and more self-assured than I had ever seen her at 14. Her words, "I want to stay with Sarah," were rather explicit. My mom left me behind. I was picked by Sarah. My actual family is her. I saw Jessica's face fall apart, not because of true sorrow, but rather because she realized she had no more power. Our parents were unable to look at each other, and Lucy rose to her feet, at last unburdened by her mother's shadow. The judge made a prompt and clear ruling. I was granted complete custody of Lucy, and Jessica was prohibited from communicating with her daughter at all. Her effort to sell custody was deemed morally reprehensible by the court, who also said it was an obvious sign that she was unable to be a parent. As the decision was read, I saw Jessica sob in her chair. Without saying a word, her boyfriend, who had been seated in the rear of the courtroom, got up and left. I then learned that he had left her that same day because he was repulsed by her effort to sell her own child. In the courtroom parking lot, my parents attempted to apprehend us. "Sarah, please," demanded Mom. "We can work this out as a family." I gave them one final glance. "Relatives, neither of us has considered you family in years. What you did to me and what you let Jessica to do to Lucy is not fair." Dad insisted, "But where will Jessica go?" Robert abandoned her. There was no comedy in my laughter. Obviously, I'm still concerned about Jessica. There are certain things that never change. Jessica returned to her original residence with our parents. The golden child is still being pampered, forgiven, and not maturing. This time, however, she had lost something priceless as a result of her mistakes. Life continued. As though the burden of doubt had finally been removed, Lucy flung herself back into her studies with newfound vigor. She began taking photography classes, joined the school newspaper team, and expressed interest in pursuing a college degree in journalism. As we were preparing supper one evening, she asked, "You know what's funny?" Because my mother kept departing, I believed for years that I was flawed. However, I now see that she was the issue. She was only capable of loving herself. In awe of her knowledge, I gave her a firm hug. "You're the strongest person I know, kiddo." Grandpa George and Grandma Eleanor continued to be our pillars of support. At their home, Sundays became a revered custom. They preserved newspaper clippings of every item Lucy wrote for the school paper, boasted to their friends about her accomplishments, and proudly hung her photographs in their living room. Grandma Eleanor once told me, "You two saved each other," as we watched Lucy teach Grandpa George how to operate his new digital camera. "Just like George and I tried to save you." She was correct. I had discovered the family I had always desired, not the one I was born into, but the one we chose together, while attempting to give Lucy the upbringing I was never able to have. I still sometimes receive texts from my parents about Jessica's most recent drama, but I choose to ignore them. Lucy said she prefers it that way and hasn't spoken to her mother since the court battle. After burning, certain bridges ought to remain ashes. Lucy took first place in a student journalism competition held around the state last week. I reflected on the fearful 9-year-old child I had met years before and the self-assured adolescent she had grown into as I watched her get her prize. I reflected on broken cycles, healed wounds, and unrestricted love.